Anyway, today I thought, since I'm back on BookTube, I thought I'd actually do a little catch-up video to tell you about different things, how my reading's going this year and different changes, and then I will also show you my TBR because that's changed as well, and I'll talk about it a little bit later. So obviously I disappeared last year. I think last video I filmed was for the Magical Readathon in August, and then that was that. I'm not going to be talking about last year at all, so all of the stuff I'm going to be talking about will be just for this year, for 2024, because it kind of makes sense. But I thought, as I'm back on BookTube, and I will be in future videos referencing different books that I might have read this year, or different like TBR systems that I've got, I will be referencing all of that, so I think it's good to sit down and talk you through all of these things before I actually talk about them in the future. So yeah, that's what we're here for. Firstly though, I have just recently come back from a trip to Norway. That's why I'm wearing this jumper. We went to Oslo for 2.5 days and I absolutely loved this city. It's so quiet, there's not many cars around, and it's very clean. The city's really clean. There aren't that many people around for a capital city. I was really surprised, like comparing to Paris, where we went to in May. That was packed with people. Constant sirens, police sirens mostly, whilst in Oslo none of that happened at all. And the sushi is the best sushi I've ever had. It was amazing, so that was absolutely great. And obviously all of the nature is so close to the city. So obviously there's the sea, there's, if you go to one of the islands next to it, by boat again, there's beaches, kind of mountains, like small ones that we went to, tiny little hills even there where we went, and obviously forests. It was great. We got drenched in a forest on one of the islands. Couldn't really leave because we were waiting for a boat, so it was really fun getting drenched on the beach and then running for the forest. It was great. It was an amazing experience. I loved it. And all of the buildings in there as well are quite different styles, different colours. It was fantastic just looking at it all. Just normal streets are absolutely beautiful, I think, so I loved it. Right, so now let's talk about books. That's what we're here for. So yeah, let's talk about some genres and mostly how my reading's going. So this year I have not been doing any like set TBRs like I used to be doing every month with my wheel of TBR. This time instead I'm doing mood reading, and it's working much better for me. I didn't do any single TBR at all, and I loved it, so it's working absolutely fine for me. I did do different sort of things throughout the year, like I would choose different books, put them in a stack, the ones that I'm excited about, and then let a random number generator choose like kind of the order that I'm reading them from, which was also really fun. So I'd pick one book at a time, then I'd finish that, come back to my stack, do another random number generator pick, and so on and so forth. It was great. So I have read more this year so far, I think, than I have for the past few years at this time, I think, if I'm not wrong. And there aren't even small books, so previously it would be quite a few small books. This time I have read a few graphic novels maybe though, but not a lot of short books, not a lot of children's books, not a lot of audiobooks even. I'm not into audiobooks much. I do still have, I think, 4 left on my Audible from credits that I had before. Maybe listen to one of them, but I'll just listen to them whenever I'm in the mood for it, because sometimes the mood does strike and I want to listen to an audiobook, but I have gone off audiobooks completely. I do still read ebooks, and my TBR for ebooks has gone a little bit bigger than it was before, which I will talk about closer to the end when I talk about my TBR system, TBR things in general. My cat is with me again, so if you hear noises, that's him doing little silly things as he does, but I love him. I have gone off fantasy mostly. I still have quite a few fantasy books on my TBR, and occasionally I am still interested in fantasy books and still occasionally like buy them actively. if I find it interesting, but generic fantasy is not my thing. Maybe cozy fantasy is something I am a little bit more interested in. I haven't read a lot, but I did read Legends and Lattes and then Bookshops and Bone Dust, and recently bought one book that I can't currently see. I don't know where it is. Oh, I see one. The Spell Bookshop. Sorry, The Spell Shop. This one is a cozy fantasy. I love the cover. But I will talk about actually the books that I have bought this year. I think I'll do maybe a few installments kind of thing with those, just to show you which books I've bought throughout the year. It won't be massive videos, but I still want to show you the books that I bought, because I've gone, speaking of that, I have gone completely bonkers on those. I have bought loads of books this year. My TBR has gone wild, but again I'll talk about the amount of books I've got as well a little bit later. But anyway, so I was talking about the genres. Fantasy is not my genre anymore. I don't read actively, I don't read a lot of it. There are some specific genres, some specific fantasies that I'm still interested in, like dark fantasy is something I'm interested in, occasional YA fantasy, basically not your epic fantasy and not generic sort of fantasy. I'm not into that, but just some specific sort of things. I don't know how to describe it. Maybe in the future videos that will make a little bit more sense. I don't know. My favourite genre for sure is crime fiction or police procedurals even. That I just eat up so quickly and I love them. They're the most interesting. Whenever I'm in a slump, that's the kind of book that would pull me out of it. I love it. I have significantly started reading a lot less historical fiction, and that wasn't really done by choice. I don't think I don't enjoy it anymore. I just find crime fiction is a lot easier to read, whilst with historical fiction it's a lot more lyrical usually. You have to pay a little bit more attention to it, and it's just a little bit more brain consuming and sometimes doesn't quite grab my attention. Obviously I still would like to read it. I've got quite a few historical fiction on my TBR, but it's not my main read genre as it used to be. As well as middle grades, I have gone off middle grades quite a bit. I do still read one every now and then, but I think it's quite rare now. It's just not my genre. I like creepy middle grades though. That's the thing I still want to read and would like to get more of on my TBR, because I don't have any currently, I don't think. Maybe one or two. But that's it. Sci-fi is still the genre I'd like to get to more. I have read a few this year. They weren't brilliant, and I've got quite a few left on my TBR, which is great. Something to look forward to. Horror is the genre I would again like to get to a little bit more. I've got quite a few horror books on my TBR now, and I'd like to get more of them read. So there is that. I'm just looking at my bookshelves to remind me of what genres I've got and what genres I've gone off and stuff. I still love contemporary books that are sort of set around bookshops, something to do with bookshops, and like things like that basically. So I still enjoy those quite a bit. Yeah, I think that's mostly it about my reading taste, how it's changed so far. I still read quite varied, I would say, but there are some definitely some genres that have sort of suffered because I read a lot more crime fiction. I've also gone a little bit more strict with books, so if I'm not enjoying it early on, I can DNF it pretty quickly. Like, I think my earliest was 7 pages, but I think I'm one of those people who, when I pick up a book, I know if I'm going to like it or not from like very early on. I don't know what it is about it, but most of the time I've noticed when I'm not enjoying the book, I think of DNFing it, but then I persevere, and then at the end I think I could have DNF'd it, because it's usually a 2 or a 3 star. So was it worth my time? Not really. So again, it just proves that I know what I like, which is great. But also I'm thinking always, I've got so many books on my TBR that reading something that is going to be a 3 star is not actually, doesn't feel like it's worth my time. I don't want to do it because I've got loads of books on my TBR. Again, I will tell you how many books I've got on my TBR a little bit later. My goal for Goodreads for this year was 60 books, and I've read 47 out of them, and I'm filming this on the 13th of September, Friday by the way, Friday the 13th. So I don't think I'm doing too badly with that at all, which is great. So as I'm on talking about the books that I read, obviously I'm not going to tell you all of the books that I read so far this year, because it's going to be a lot and I don't think anyone really wants to know that. But I will talk about 4 hits and 4 disappointments that I've had in a little bit more detail, but not going to go into too much detail about them. Let's start with the hits. On the topic of like cozy books that are set in a bookshop, I really did enjoy The Door to Door Bookstore by Karsten Henn. I only gave it 4 stars. It wasn't quite a 5-star material for me, but it was definitely the one that I keep thinking about still, and it was so cozy, it was so adorable. The chemistry between the characters was also amazing. So in this book we follow this man who has worked in the bookshop, I think, for all of his life, and now the owner of that bookshop has basically gone to a care home. So the daughter now runs the shop, but she is making some changes, and one of the changes, she doesn't want him to go and deliver books physically like he's been doing all his life, but he still wants to do it because he enjoys it and he's made the connections with different people, so he doesn't want to lose that. But this time this little girl joins him on his adventures as well. It's really quite sweet, and the characters that are in the book as well that he delivers books to, they all have different sort of background stories. It doesn't go too much into it, but seeing all of that and how books affect their lives, it's amazing. I loved it. I feel like I want to potentially give it a 5 because after a few months I read it, I still think about it with warmth, and it was great. I've loved it. Funnily enough, I started with a 4-star, but now let's move on to the 5 stars that I've had this year. So one of them is The Tattoos of Auschwitz by Heather Morris. I've read it only recently and I talked about it in my previous video. This is obviously a historical fiction set in the period of World War II. It's based on a true story though. I absolutely loved it. I loved the main character. I loved even the love story that I thought I wouldn't quite like because it's not usually my thing. But how he treated his teammates, how he treated other people, how he gave hope to other people. It was great, and it wasn't even that heavy in terms of, obviously it's happening in Auschwitz, so things wouldn't be great there, but it wasn't described as heavily, so loads of people will probably find that okay to read. So that was a 5-star. I absolutely fell in love with it, and now I've got a sequel that I really want to get to, so hopefully soon I'll get to it. Next one was actually slightly unexpectedly, but it was Killjoy by Holly Jackson. Don't get me wrong, I loved her A Good Girls to Get to Murder trilogy. Absolutely loved it, and the 3rd book was the best out of the series, but because this one is such a short book and it's a prequel, I wasn't expecting to love it quite as much. So in this one, Pip is basically with other people playing like a murder mystery game, and I just gave it 5 stars. I kept forgetting that it's not a real mystery, not a real murder that they're investigating, that it was in the game. I kept forgetting about it, and the setting that the author created for this was fantastic as well. I absolutely loved it. I read it in one sitting pretty much, which again I wasn't quite expecting. I don't normally vibe with short books, and considering it's not even about a real murder, not about a real case, I thought I would quite enjoy it. I gave it 5 stars. It was brilliant. Another unexpected 5 stars is The X. I'm so sorry for all of the, well, dust and whatnot, Reflections by Frida McFadden. So this one, I picked it up because I think Amazon recommended it to me for reasons that I can't remember why. But I did read the, what's it called? Do You Remember? That was the name of the book. I gave it 4 stars, and then Amazon recommended me that one, and I think it was either free or for £1, so I thought I'd give it a go, and I absolutely loved it. So there is unreliable narrator in it that I know loads of people don't like. I don't mind it. For me, in thrillers, as long as I'm entertained, as long as I'm shocked with revelations and whatnot, I love it, so I didn't mind it personally. But it was just a fantastic book. It was great. It was like a bit of an obsession sort of story about this ex who is... I can't remember what's the spoiler. It's not a spoiler, but basically it's based on a couple. Then they broke up and now he's got a new girlfriend, and this ex is probably a little bit too obsessed with all of that. So there is that. I can't tell too much about it, but it was just fascinating to read about it. It doesn't sound like a very interesting premise to me myself, but the execution was great. I couldn't put it down, and the remaining third of the book, I just gobbled it up so quickly I couldn't put it down at all. So those are all of my hits. Now let's move on to disappointments. Sorry if the angles keep changing, it's because my camera keeps being overheated, so I have to stop and start again. But I was going to start talking about disappointments. So these 4 are not like terrible books, it's just I expected something different from them. First one is Devil's Workshop by Alex Gratian, which is the 3rd book in Murder Squad series, I think it's called. The first one was The Yard, which I really enjoyed and gave 4 stars to. This one I gave 3 stars to, and it did feature Jack the Ripper, which I thought would be really quite interesting, but it wasn't. So this is a historical fiction, crime fiction even. We've got this murder squad based in London, which is part of the police obviously, and they are overwhelmed with different murders and whatnot, so they're investigating it all. And in this one, like I said, it's Jack the Ripper, but we do get a perspective from Jack the Ripper, and I think that's what put me off, because his voice in the books is not something I wanted him to be. Especially considering I just finished, before reading this one, I finished the non-fiction book, all based on Jack the Ripper, I think, at the time, and just didn't quite gel well with it for some reason, so I only gave it 3 stars. And then the next book in a series, I think I also gave 3 stars, The Harvest Man. I've got the last one to finish and I will be done with the series, but hopefully that one will be good. But yes, this one was a disappointment. Another one was a reread, but another disappointment, I also gave it 3 stars, is a Chocolat, I think, by Joanne Harris. So this has a story. I had Strawberry Thief on my TBR that I just thought was a standalone by this author. Turns out it's not. Turns out it's the 4th book in a series. So for that I needed to reread the first one because I couldn't remember what happened, and then obviously read the 2nd and 3rd books in the series. So I bought the first 3, and like I said, this was a bit of a disappointment. I don't remember. First time I gave it 4 stars and really enjoyed it. This time I gave it 3 stars. I don't know what it is about it. Whether it was too lyrical for me, too like too description-y, I don't know. I have changed my taste. Like I said, I don't really read much of like literary fiction because I find my brain wanders somewhere else when I'm reading stuff like this. And this one is a bit of a magical realism set in a French village about this woman who goes there and opens her chocolate shop, although I think chocolate shop is a bit of an offensive term for that, because I think it's like chocolate boutique is what it's called. And it's basically, the village is all very religious and apparently it's a sin and whatnot. She's sort of fighting the reverend who's trying so hard to make her business close and whatnot, but the descriptions are really, really good. I did enjoy the book, but for some reason I enjoyed it less than the first time around. I don't know what it is, but all descriptions about chocolate and food are just superb. It made me want to eat chocolate and drink coffee and stuff like that all the time. Next one is a disappointment. The Reappearance of Rachel Price by Holly Jackson. Funnily enough, her other book was in my hits. This is a disappointment. This is her newest release. It came out this year, and in this one we follow this sort of documentary about this Rachel Price who disappeared years ago, and now they're interviewing the people of the family of Rachel, and she suddenly reappears. So I gave it 2 stars. I hated the main character. I think you're supposed to maybe not like her, but I hated her, how childish she was, even though she's a teenager. Some things that happened in the book just didn't make sense, and the red herrings that we were thrown, I didn't enjoy that in here at all. And then something at the end that happened, I thought nobody would react like this, and without spoilers, it's difficult to describe what I didn't like about it, but it just didn't grab me at all, and I thought it was quite a few steps down from A Good Girl's Guide to Murder series. I still have got 5 Survive on my TBR, which I will be reading this month for the readathon. So hopefully that one will be good, although I haven't heard great things about it. But I'm still hoping. But this one was just a disappointment. And then the last disappointment I'm going to talk about is Empty Smiles by Catherine Arden, which is the 4th and final book in this series. It's like a creepy middle grade, so I've pulled out the full series. I've got Small Spaces, Dead Voices and Dark Waters, and they sort of gradually went downhill for me, to be honest. The first one, Small Spaces, was really good. I really enjoyed it. It was fun. I gave it 4 stars. It was very atmospheric. It was creepy. Dead Voices was also quite scary. I quite enjoyed it. Dark Waters started to get a little bit downhill. I can't remember what I rated that, maybe 3, maybe 4. But this was a 2-star. It wasn't creepy at all. It was lacking everything that the first 3 books had. The atmosphere wasn't there. And I just was disappointed with it. So there we go. Now the time has come to talk to you about my TBR. So, I've got essentially 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different TBRs now. This shelf here, the whole bookcase, is my main TBR, is what I call it. There's quite a few books, I think 200 and something. I will tell you later when I check my Goodreads. 200 and something books is on this main bookshelf. I'll show you, by the way. I will get up in a minute and show you all of that. Then I have my Kindle TBR as well, and I think that has 62 books. I think I bought 2 this morning. So yeah, 62 books on my TBR on Kindle. Then I've got my wrapped up section, which is a 3rd TBR, which again, I stole that idea from Meg with Books, I think her channel is called, which are all of my old books on my TBR. So I'll explain a little bit later. Then I've got Unhaul Pile, which is basically when I was rearranging my bookshelves, I thought I would gonna just unhaul them because I'm not interested in them, but then I thought I'd give them a chance. So the idea is I would start the book, and then if I don't enjoy it, then obviously unhaul it. If I enjoy it, then keep reading it, obviously. And then the last one I've got is Temporary Keeps, which is, I think, temporary saves. I think they're about 16, maybe less now. But the idea as well is that because I did that in May this year, I've got to either get rid of them or read them by May next year, 2025. So that's the idea. Now let's show you the books. I hope you can hear me okay, but this is basically my main TBR shelf down to there. So I used to separate it by genres, but recently I've done this thing that with my TBR jar, which is here, which has got all of the titles from this main bookcase, choose them basically randomly to stand next to each other rather than genres, because I noticed that I started to go to the same genre, same shelves all the time, which is not fair to other books, so I just combined them all together. So on the very top shelf I've got this stack, which is just smaller books that didn't fit anywhere else, and stuff behind is next books in the series that I can't get to at the moment because I need to read other books in the series, which will be sprinkled on this shelf. So as you can see, there's shelf number 1. I'm not going to go into too much detail. I've got this mug here, which has all of the Kindle books in there, so randomly choose a Kindle book whenever I fancy. Then there's this shelf random, then there's this. I bought this polar bear in Norway, by the way, in the Fram Museum, so it's a new edition. Then I've got this shelf, and I've got this shelf, and all of the, well, most of the hardbacks, and Rudy. Yeah, and some Halloween related candles. So that is my main TBR. Moving on to this other shelf here. On the very top, oh, my fairy lights are flashing on the camera for some reason. On the very top, like I've explained already, is the wrapped up books. So all of the orders books on my TBR, I have wrapped them up, and I every now and then just go to the shelf and pick them up. If I need, I do have like a TBR jar sort of thing in there as well if I need to randomly choose it, because I do have numbers at the back of them, but I did write them really small so that I don't know what numbers they are. That's that. Obviously I wrapped them in December and there were 50. Now I think there's 38 or 37, so I have made some progress. Some of them I have just DNF'd after starting, some of them I have finished. So there is that. And then I've got, next one is Unhaul. It's 2 shelves, not these. These are my TBR for this month, but that's the Unhaul. And of course the TBR jar for it as well, because with these ones, what I do is, if I don't fancy anything specifically, I would just go to this shelf and pick one randomly. Whatever comes up, I just read it. If I like it, I keep reading it. If I don't like it, I just unhaul it. And then the last one is this shelf, which is temporary saves, like I said. Again, the TBR jar is for there. And same principle again, if I don't fancy anything specific, that is, I would go pick up something from that TBR jar and read it. If I like it, I read it. If I don't, I DNF it. That's it. And of course, like I said, I do have my Kindle TBR. So my TBR has grown significantly this year and I actually love it. And having 5 different TBRs also help, because let's say if I'm not in the mood for, sometimes if I get a little bit slumpy, I want to read, but I don't want to read anything that I might enjoy, if that makes sense. So I would go to either Unhaul or Temporary Keeps, pick something out of there, or even Wrapped Up book, because then I don't have the pressure to not ruin the book because of my reading slump. And by doing that, it obviously reduces them. Obviously the goal is to get through them, so they're there for that reason as well. So it kind of helps, plus it makes it a little bit more exciting to have the main TBR and then some other ones. So let me tell you how many books I've got on each TBR, because I've got on Goodreads my shelves as well, based on the TBR that I've got here. That'd be interesting to find out how many I've got, right? So on my main bookcase there's 229 books. Temporary Saves has 13 books. Unhaul TBR has got 28 books. And Wrapped Up books is 36 books. And Kindle TBR is 62 books. So let's find out how many that is altogether. So I've got 368 books altogether on my TBR. Mind you, on Kindle there are quite a few series, so I bought them because they were cheap, like for £1 for like 10 books. And I think I've got 2 or 3 series like that on there, so that would reduce. If I don't like the first book, obviously I won't be reading the rest of the series, so that will reduce it by quite a bit. But yes, 368 books. Most of them I'm really excited about. Others not so excited about, but it's really, I love having the Wrapped Up books, because that way I do try to like forget what books there are. I do have them written down if I ever need to go back to it or whatever, and they are on my, like I said, Goodreads as well. But I do try and forget what they are, so that whenever I unwrap one, it's like a present, it's like a surprise, and then I have to treat it as a brand new book and hope to enjoy it, obviously. One of them actually was the Tattooes of Auschwitz, and I loved that book, so that was a hit, the biggest hit. So I'm hoping there will be more books like this, because there are some that have been there for 4, 5, 3 years, which is quite a long time. So it'd be nice to get to them, and hopefully there are some hidden gems in there. But I just love having this different TBR thing and get excited about all of the books. I love my collection, I love my bookshelves, it excites me, I love it so much. It's just, I love it. I know I said I love so many times, but it just gets me really excited and I enjoy it. And also having TBR jar helps for each one of them, because I do like to use it every now and then. Like most of the time I mood read, but sometimes I do try to do different things according to my mood. So yeah, but I try to focus obviously on my main TBR, because that's the biggest one first of all, and those are the ones I'm definitely the most excited about. But I try to obviously pay attention to that bookcase as well, but mostly when I'm not in a specific mood for anything, when I'm willing to try something new, or when I'm in the mood to read but don't want to read anything good, if that makes any sense at all. Like if I want to try something but I'm not necessarily in a good mood, so if I read a book I'm really excited about, then that would ruin it. Does that make sense? So that's when I tend to go to those books. But sometimes I'm just in the mood to read something from those shelves, and then I just go and do it. When I'm in the mood for a specific book, just grab that specific book. But I think going forward I will be doing different systems with my TBR, because I do like having a small TBR, but I don't like restricting myself. So I don't like using prompts recently. I would just do it differently. So you will see, the more I make videos, the more I do it, it will start making sense, I hope. But I think that's everything I wanted to catch up with you about. I can't think of anything else, so I think in the future, like I said, I will do the book haul video, which will probably be separate parts, maybe like 3 or 4, and then I might do my unhaul video as well, because I do have a big stack of books that I will be getting rid of. I have already gotten rid of quite a few, but I still got plenty that I need to get rid of. So that is hopefully something for you to look forward to in the future videos. So yeah, I love talking about books, but unfortunately it's time to stop and go have some lunch for me. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching. Bye!